Every day there's been baffling new terminology to learn, with the latest being quantitative easing, the Bank of England's recent attempt to stop the economy tumbling into a great big bin full of bums. Now, unless you speak fluent jargon, it's not immediately clear what quantitative easing actually is.
In fact, as Newsnight found out when they hit the streets to ask human beings, even Brainiac Moss from the IT crowd doesn't know what it is.
The easing of quantitativeness.
Thank God then that the news is on hand to describe exactly what quantitative easing is in easy-to-follow metaphorical steps.
Put simply, quantitative easing is a tool for fixing a blockage in an economy that isn't running smoothly.
There you go, it's a sort of spanner, made of money.
But how does it work?
Well, I suppose you twist it into the stock market.
It's like creating money out of thin air or filling up a petrol tank with imaginary petrol. That is what most economists agree is needed to get any recovery started.
Oh God, he isn't making any sense. What I need is someone who can't help but speak in profoundly simple terms.
Hello, welcome to 5 News. I'm Natasha Kaplinsky.
I'm preemptively chuckling because I reckon she's about to tell us it's designed to encourage the banks and arse to get lending and spending.
It is designed to encourage the banks and us to get lending and spending. Our chief correspondent John Samuels investigates whether these measures will help an economy that's been going off the rails.
Why, Natasha, that almost sounds like a cue for a bad railway metaphor.
The economy at the moment seems to be like a runaway train.
Great, all right, let's see you run with this one.
The government's been pulling lots of levers behind the scenes to try and slow down the economic crisis, but it's got to such a stage now that they're trying a different track.
Just tell me how it works.
It's called quantitative easing. The idea is to pump more money into the economy and get banks lending again.
Toot toot, the economy's made of trains.
We once had a model economy. The government hopes the latest measures will mean we soon see light at the end of the tunnel.
Now, far be it from me to want to fart in your sleeping bag or anything, but statistically speaking, it's quite likely that some of you watching the programme this evening will at some point in your lives die. But famous people die too, if that's any consolation, and the news doesn't always know how to cope with it when that happens. Here's an excerpt from a piece we did on the death of Jade Goody. The coverage of Jade Goody's death was hardly about death or Jade at all. Instead, it was about the news media having a collective self-perpetuating bun fight. Take the tabloid papers, which, having hurled buckets of misogynist abuse or eye-swivelling rage over Jade for years, suddenly had to perform a U-turn so huge it was visible from space and start gushing with cliched tabloid speak about inspiring bravery.
It was almost as though the press felt guilty for treating her badly in the past, although of course the press doesn't feel anything, it just wants to sell more papers.
That's why they willingly put her on the front cover as often as possible, veering into astronomical bad taste in a way that would simply alarm other cancer sufferers.
And when they didn't have a photo, they simply made one up.
Take this astonishing Daily Star front page from the 18th of February, which, as Private Eye pointed out, is actually a Photoshop version of this more jubilant photograph taken a year ago when Jade still had hair.
It's amazing to think somebody actually did that. Somebody actually sat there, spending hours photoshopping out that hair, giving Jade retrospective cancer to sell their f***ing paper. And to think the press has the temerity to moan whenever TV gets accused of faking things. What twats.
Speaking of things that want photoshopping, look at Peter Cushing here, aka Carol Malone.
Here's someone who had to change her tune quicker than an iPod shuffle.
Having berated Jade for 200 years in her shit and nasty newspaper columns, suddenly she was conducting sympathetic interviews with her before taking to the newsstands on March the 8th to say it was time to turn the cameras off Jade, asking, is it just me who's starting to feel like the spectre at the feast?
Although I think she meant look, not feel.
Luckily for Carol, before they turned the cameras off, she had time to appear in a mawkish ITV Tonight special the very next night.
She made headlines without thinking, and she was perfect.
Of course, the tabloids weren't the only ones jammed full of Jade. No, the self-appointed quality press got in on the act too. They ran plenty of chin-stroking, what does it all mean pieces on the cultural meaning of Jade's suffering. There was a lot of woe-betided intellectual masturbation, which sometimes veered over into outright snobbery, such as in Rod Little's bizarre, venomous article for The Spectator. You know, I've tried to think of something clever to say about Rod Little, but he just comes across as a c***. Throughout the depressing blanket coverage, Jade was repeatedly referred to as a star of reality TV, which she was, although it's more accurate to say she was a star of reality TV and news.
After all, in her final weeks, taken accumulatively, she made far more appearances on front pages and news broadcasts than in her living TV specials.
Sally, what's the latest that you've been able to discover about Jade's condition?
The populist news broadcasts had exciting live updates, filling us in on each fresh development as and when it happened, often displaying characteristic tact.
We were also hearing that perhaps the cancer has spread to her brain. What's the latest on that, Rachel?
They also repeatedly looped footage of her being wheeled to an ambulance, footage with a cheery watermark in the top right corner, marking it the property of Mr. Paparazzi, the brainchild of fatuous Mel Smith lookalike and almighty human arse-cheek Darren Lyons, seen here on Sky News, giddily commenting on a comment on the sort of press coverage he's a part of.
It's a superb read, and I would love everyone to have a look at this today.
And which I'm now commenting on. This whole thing is a crazy, endless feedback loop.
Of course, when the sad news actually arrived, it was broken dramatically live, and we were treated to real-time spooling footage from outside her house, which we were told was a perfectly acceptable thing to do.
This is not any kind of intrusion.
This was followed by emotive coverage of well-wishers leaving flowers.
It has, in this corner of Essex, been a sombre Mother's Day.
And the occasional talking head overstating her good points to a frankly embarrassing degree.
I think for people she's become a saint, a princess, an exemplar of biblical proportions.
Yeah, she's the patron saint of celebrity perfume ranges.
None of it seemed real, not the gaudy tabloid front pages, not the garish ads for tribute magazines published before she'd even died.
OK Magazine's special tribute issue with wonderful memories of Jade, out now.
Not the tributes from establishment figures who, let's be fair, were only answering questions they'd been asked by the press.
In the end, Jade Goody died on the biggest reality show going, not Big Brother or some living TV special, but the news. After all, with its jaunty titles and its easy hate figures, its selective storytelling and its stupid viewer votes, it's a hair's breadth from being a multi-platform I'm a Celebrity spin-off.
In fact, all it needs next is a special live edition where Gordon Brown has to eat a Wichita grub or something to win the next election, and then the circle's complete. And then just before the world ends, we can all enjoy a quick look back at some of our best bits.
You know, when I started doing this series, I thought, hey, this will be a good self-improvement exercise. I'll watch loads of broadcasts and I'll know what's going on in the world. But all it's done, actually, is depress me because the news is so flippin' horrible.
We believe, from what the police officer was telling us, that he killed his 74-year-old grandmother, also his mother, his uncle, his cousin, his 15-year-old second cousin. In addition, he killed a baby, he killed a sheriff deputy's wife, he killed 2 pedestrians, he killed a petrol station assistant, he killed a motorist, he let loose 7 rounds at a trooper, he shot the chief of police, and he shot himself. I will let you digest that for a moment.
Which isn't to say the world itself is horrible. I mean, it's still full of sunshine and flowers and cuddly creatures you'd like to have sex with, like this rabbit. Oh, look at that rabbit. Anyway, I guess what I'm saying is there's generally more good than bad in the world, unless you're watching the news, which likes to accentuate the negative at every turn.
For instance, a few weeks ago at a homecoming parade for our boys, a small group of 15 to 20 Islamist protesters kicked up a stink by wobbling a load of antagonistic placards around and loudly decrying Western imperialism from behind a line of Western imperialists defending their right to shout about the system that was permitting them to shout.
If you see what I mean.
Predictably, the protest outraged some well-wishers so much things quickly turned ugly. Before long, 2 people were arrested, one for climbing on top of a supermarket and throwing a packet of bacon at the protesters.
So a tiny minority of another minority tried to stir up some outrage, and there's 2 arrests. Not a huge deal. Except the news thought differently, of course.
To the news, it was a huge deal. It provided dramatic material for news bulletins, fantastic emotive copy for populist tabloid headlines, and a great starting point for countless hours of confused debate on shows like Banal Morning, Guff Storm, The Right Stuff.
Steve, what's your feelings on this?
Well, I totally think it's bad that they tried to protest and basically...
And shorter bursts of simplistic yes-no debate on decisive Sky News.
Hello? Yes, I think probably... Hello?
Meanwhile, radical cleric Anjem Chowdhury, who heads the group that arranged the protest, was all over cosy GMTV, enjoying the publicity and their comfy sofa.
And the reality is, you see, that if we had this demonstration at another time, when the parade was not taking place, it probably wouldn't have got the coverage that it's got, and I wouldn't be here now talking about it on your programme.
You've certainly got us all going this morning. There's been a lot of dialogue, and dialogue has to be considered a good thing, I guess. Thank you very much.
It's good that you can come and talk to us about it.
Yes, thanks, Anjem. Now, would you like an infidel biscuit? They're lovely. There was also another parade scheduled to take place that day, which the news excitedly cut to. But wouldn't you know it, when the moment of truth came, the Watford March passed off without incident, and the news was left without the story.
Parades. Let's have a listen to see what's going on down there in Watford.
No, nobody shouting baby killers. This is boring. Fuck it.
Still, while there wasn't even the tiniest protest in Watford, there was a huge protest taking place in Northern Ireland, where thousands of demonstrators were taking to the streets in the name of peace. Yes, that's thousands of protesters coming together to demonstrate against the recent upsurge in Republican violence. So surely if 15 to 20 protesters in Luton gets a lot of coverage, surely thousands of protesters in Northern Ireland is going to get even more, right? Wrong.
Tonight at 10, a mass shooting at a school in Germany leaves 16 people dead.
Yes, because on the same day as the peace demonstration, a lone maniac in Germany went berserk with a gun, killing 16 people. This senseless tragedy provided material for news reports for days to follow. First, there were the initial dramatic breakdowns detailing precisely how the carnage unfolded. There was grim, voyeuristic mobile phone footage of the gunman's last moments, and a chilling reconstruction of a warning he apparently posted on the internet.
He typed these words: "Everybody's laughing at me. No one sees my potential. I'm serious."
Which later turned out to be almost certainly false, incidentally. The aftermath in Vinnerden proved so compelling for the vulture-like rolling news stations they even filled airtime showing things that weren't happening yet. 2 days later, even footage from an old ping-pong tournament in which the back of the gunman's head was vaguely visible was still considered news.
The latest pictures of Kretschmer show him playing table tennis, his favourite sport.
And 3 days later, even worse footage, pixelated to the point where it looked like a broadcast from the Lego dimension, well, that was considered news too.
In the video, Kretschmer is shown taking part in an arm wrestling contest in Rottenburg last year.
Yeah, I think if I squint I can just about make out the face of a killer. Isn't the news brilliant? Repeatedly showing us a killer's face isn't news, it's just rubbernecking. And what's more, this sort of coverage only serves to turn this murdering little twat into a sort of nihilistic pin-up boy. One thing the news kept plaintively asking was why this had happened.
Why? What had triggered in the mind of a seemingly normal teenager such fury and alienation?
Well, if you want to know why not ask a forensic psychiatrist?
We've had 20 years of mass murders, throughout which I have repeatedly told CNN and our other media, if you don't want to propagate more mass murders, don't start the story with sirens blaring.
The school day had only just begun when the attacker struck.
Don't have photographs of the killer.
The 17-year-old's 3-hour rampage ended in his own death.
Don't make this 24/7 coverage.
The German Chancellor is about to give her reaction. We'll bring that to you live.
Do everything you can not to make the body count the lead story.
Carnage in the classroom, 16 people are dead.
Not to make the killer some kind of anti-hero.
Dressed in black combat gear, the gunman opened fire at random.
Do localize this story to the affected community and make it as boring as possible in every other market. Because every time we have intense saturation coverage of a mass murder, we expect to see one or two more within a week.
But I mean, hold on a second here.
In summary then, not only does bad news always trump good news, but that bad news might itself actually help create more bad news. Which is good news, if you're the news.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, that's the end of this special compilation show, which was scheduled for next week. Instead, next week we've got a whole brand new episode. That is a treat. Yes, that's good, isn't it? Until then, that's all we've got time for. Go away.
And Charlie's back with another brand new episode of Newswipe next Wednesday at 10:30. Next tonight here on BBC4, Marcus Brigstock puts Nigel Haver's mettle to the test in I've Never Seen Star Wars.